Well, hello guys, this is Pat from Rain Country, and today I was going to sharpen and dress up an old machete. I had an unusual request from one of our viewers. She wanted me to show how to sharpen a machete. Well, this is how I sharpen a machete, and this particular machete that I have is in pretty rough shape. I don't have a heated shop. You know, it's been years since I've used it. So what I was going to do is I was going to clean it up from start to finish. Hopefully it gives you guys a couple ideas on what you might do. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what I got. And again, this might work for some people. It might not work for others. But I can tell you when I get done with this is going to be a sharp tool. Right now it doesn't have much of an edge on it because, as you can see, terribly rusted. And I actually like this machete quite a bit. This machete is probably, I would say probably 35 years old maybe. I'm going to go ahead and put this on a block of wood so the handle has something to set on. So when I rest the machete, I will rest it on this board like this, and then I'm going to set this on the edge of my workbench nice and flat. I'll take a couple of quick clamps and clamp the front and the back of the machete so it's nice and sturdy. It's not going anywhere. And then I'm going to take an orbital sander, and with some fine sandpaper on here, I think this is 120, I'm going to remove all of this rust off of here. As you can see, this is badly pitted. You can see those pits in there. I'm not going to remove those. When I get done with this, I'll treat this with a little bit of oil just to preserve it. Help preserve it. I suppose you could wax it if you wanted to, but yeah, it's, you know, this is, like I say, a real old abused machete, but I thought it would make an excellent tutorial as far as this viewer's concerned of what I would do to clean these things up. This particular machete has a little feature here that you can grab small branches and pull towards you, and it has a little cutter on the inside of that. I'll show you how I would sharpen that as well. Put the quick clamps back on here. Now you can take sandpaper and do this by hand as well. I like the orbital sander. It's a little faster and it does the same job. So that's in there nice and firm. And so I just take a flat bastard file like this one here. This happens to be a Nicholson. It is, well, 12 1/4 from tip to tip. Those of you who aren't familiar with files, the teeth on these, they're jagged, so they'll facing this way, you know, with the handle on the back side, the teeth go up and back just a little bit, up at an angle and down, so they favor this way. So when you go to file, you're filing this way. You raise the file up, bring it back, and give another full stroke. That's the proper way to use a file. Most of us, we just put it down and we go like this, and we keep resting the file on the work. This is how the teeth on a file will look. So technically, when you drag the file back this way over a piece of material, it'll have a tendency, that hard steel might have a tendency to start burring over and not keep a good edge. So they tell you to, when you're using a file, when you're going over top of your work, you want to push down like that, lift the file up and push down again. Keep going your strokes with a rotation like that. Most of us don't do that. Another technique that I found, and I'm going to show you this right now, is that I grab a hold of this side and I draw it towards me. I draw the file towards me, and it seems to make a pretty good cut. So I'm going to grab the file on both sides, and I'm going to draw it towards me because of the way I have it sitting here on the bench. So I'm going to stand back here and just try to duplicate the same. Let me show you. You're going to try to duplicate the same bevel. So you have the side of your blade comes up to a point, and then it bevels a certain way. It's got a certain angle to it. And what you want to do is try to match the original angle on that cutting edge. So this is the finished side. I'll put this back in the clamps. Of course, I have it away from the table here a little bit, but still enough underneath the block of wood that it's I can still have it mounted in there correctly. So you'll also notice on the file that these gouges, or these grooves, go a particular way. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can put an edge on this thing. You just got to be careful when you're working with this kind of edge here. You don't want to keep that finger away from that edge, or obviously this tool will do what it's designed to do and give you a nasty cut. I tap the file. I try to keep it clean because you can see it's loading up with rust right now. I keep a wire brush close to me so I can keep those grooves cleaned out. When you start filing, these grooves in here, they start loading up with material. So in this case it's rust and new material being removed off of the blade. And so every now and then I like to either tap the file lightly, and you got to do it lightly because this is a real hardened steel, and hardened steel is brittle by nature, and so you don't want to wrap this too heavy or too hard on a metal surface. I just tap it on this vise here, and a lot of times that'll get most of that material out of there because it's not sticky. A lot of times if you're filing with a rasp or anything like that, these things will load up with whatever material you're starting to file. So if you're filing anything that's got paint on it or whatever, these things will have a tendency to get loaded up. If you're filing metals, or specifically if you're filing aluminum, these things will have a tendency to load. I'm maintaining that same angle. You see how it's lower here and higher here. Maintaining that same edge all the time when I'm coming across that contact with the file and the blade edge. So I'm drawing down. You see the file is working down that way. I'm focusing on making that same angle every time. And each pass that you go through here, you'll be able to see on one side or the other where that material's coming off. When it starts coming off evenly all the way across here, then you'll be able to denote whether or not that's getting sharp or not, or whether or not you're maintaining that same angle. Okay, you can see right here, this is kind of jagged underneath here, and that's probably, there's one of two things going there. If you can see my finger, when you start getting an edge on your steel, the very edge of this starts to lap over, and you start getting a little curl of metal on the very tip of the blade. And so if you look really careful, you can see a little bit of glitter, little tiny pieces of steel that are starting to come off and hang on to the edge of the blade here. And that is telling me that I have an edge on the front of this already. So I'm going to take the I'm going to finish the very tip of this, and I'm going to take this off of here, and I'm going to show you that. You can see that's jagged all the way across there. Once I go to the other side, we can clean that up a little bit. Again, a machete is, it's great to have a razor sharp edge on it. For the most part, you're not going to have it sharp for very long when you're out in the woods and you're cutting brush with it or whatever it is you're doing. So I'm pulling this out a little bit here on the tip because I got to work the tip some, because that's where I had it clamped. Maintain that same angle. I'm filling underneath here. I'm not filling any burrs yet, so that means I still have a round edge on that machete. I'll reposition this to where it's just a little bit better, where it's resting a little bit better on this board here, so I can get this tip. So here's a little bit of that loading I was telling you about. You can see these chips in here. They start to get loaded up in the grooves. There's a little bit better shot of the grooves I was telling you about. But anyway, I take and I clean those off with this wire brush here. Okay, now I can start to feel that edge starting to curl over there a little bit, so I know I'm getting an edge on this side here. A little more work to do. So here's a picture of what the finished edge looks like on this side. Now you can see all this roughness right here. That is just, again, some of the material that's curled over from finishing this edge here. Now when I go to do the other side, that should clean up some, but I'm still going to have that jagged edge, and that's just because I got a rough file on here. But you get the idea. And you could see that I matched the angle pretty close. I mean, it's not too far off. Now you'll notice that this has only one one side to sharpen from, and that's this side that I'm working on here. So we'll take this back out of the clamp. I'll get this positioned to where we can start working that. I always like to use 2 clamps on this so this doesn't rock back and forth. Makes it nice and sturdy. And so this is a chainsaw file, or sharpening chains for power saws. And lean up against this like this to give you more stability. You know, I can lean up against the back side of the machete and it won't cut me. Of course, always, you know, when you're sharpening the front side of this thing, you always got to make sure that you stay away from the edge of this, because you have this edge exposed out here and it'll obviously cut you. And this jagged edge here, it acts almost like a serrated edge, and it actually will cut you just as fast, or if not faster. I'm going to draw this down like that and travel along the edge of the hole here. I roll the file as well. If you can see, I just kind of take my finger and just roll the file as I'm pulling down, and then that displaces a lot of the file. It works a little bit more of the file, so you're not just rubbing on one spot of the file. That knocked down with a little bit of the 120 here. Okay, you can see the paper's starting to get worn out and loaded with rust. These little orbital sanders work pretty good for this, and some will agree, some will disagree, but you know what, guys, it works, and so that's what I'm going to use. Put a fresh 180 on here. I think I'll hit both sides with this. Polish it up a little bit more. I'm not going to get all of these pits out of here. I'm not really concerned about it. That's not a showpiece that I'm going to hang inside the house and brag about. So now that edge is starting to bend over to the other side. So there's little fine particles or shavings of the blade that's folding over. So I know that I have an edge on there now. As you can see here, I have these clamps in place, and I really can't, I mean, I can, but I want to get a little closer to my work as far as having something to lean my hip up against. So I'm going to get a little closer to my work, but I have these here, and they actually act a little bit like a stop to keep me from bumping up against that blade and cutting my clothes or whatever. But I'm going to place my feet about shoulder width apart and kind of angle a little bit towards the blade and follow that same taper on the tip here. Okay, I got a good edge going on all along through there. You can tell which edge you sharpen last, because this side here is going to feel smooth, a little bit smooth to the side of your finger, and this side here is going to be a little bit jagged. And of course you don't want to run your finger across it, or else you'll probably cut it, but you can just touch it and feel it. Okay, that is a pretty sharp edge. So I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to put the front edge on the board, clamp this board down here, and just lightly, just ever so lightly, Just follow that contour down. Hardly putting any pressure at all on that. Then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Now you can dress it up with a stone, or I like using these diamond sharpeners. It's actually little tiny diamond dust particles, and that's what I use to sharpen my knives in the house with. I have a couple other different types of sharpeners as well, but you can, if you really wanted to fine tune this thing, again, you can mount this in the vise, or mount this back on the board so you can duplicate what you've done before, so you're getting yourself in a habit. But you know, you can rake this back and just dress that edge up if you'd like. You know, there's probably a lot of people out there that have the right way of doing it, but you know what? The right way of doing it is, by the time you get done, do you have a sharp product? Is your knife sharp? Did you do it safely? Very much pressure on this, but now that I'm dragging it down, I'm dragging the tip away. Now the machete would have cut just fine before I got to this point here. You know, just for utility purposes, that would have been just fine and dandy. You don't really have to get this thing razor sharp, although that was pretty daggum sharp the way I had it. But I'm just basically removing all of that bent material I was telling you about that was curling over when I was starting to get an edge on the front of that. Well, I think everybody's got the idea. I'm not looking for, you know, something that I'm going to be shaving in the morning with, but that is pretty dang sharp right there. Put a little bit of grease, or you can put a little bit of oil on here. You could wax it if you want to. I'm just going to rub a little bit of oil on this just to keep this from pitting anymore and rusting anymore. Always being mindful where I'm putting my fingers on the blade so I don't lacerate myself and have to go in there and patch myself up. I can just leave that on there like that. And then when I go to use it, I can either just wipe it off, or I can just use it, and the action of whatever I'm chopping is going to wipe it off for me. So this just keeps it from rusting. Probably should have done this a long time ago, so thank you for that viewer that brought this to my attention. Appreciate your interest in our channel, and hope you learned something. I know that if it's in real bad shape, or if you're wanting to put a if you want to take a lot of nicks or something out of there, there's, you know, you could turn a belt sander upside down and use that and just draw that blade across that belt sander, and if you maintain the correct angle, that'll put a blade on there faster than if you have a bastard file or not. Anyway, thanks for watching, take care, and God bless.